It is episode 2, season 2 of the Connected Life Book Club. We are studying The Gift of Wonder by Christine Aroney-Sign. And this, it's just is a fun book. I'm Summer. This is Candace.
Hi.
We are going to dive in here covering chapters 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And these ones, these were fun. This whole book, Candace, has been fun. I started out wondering if this was going to be like a super woo-woo kind of weird book.
Super woo-woo. I like that.
But I actually have been more excited to keep going in this book than I have in any book I've read in a long time.
Wow.
Like, it's really making me think.
That's a big deal.
And it just, I don't know, in like a very inspiring way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, that being said, where in your life story do you see God most clearly at work? And where in your story was his presence harder to see?
Okay. So this was from chapter 3, where she's talking about really the power of stories and restorative and transformative practices and all that stuff. So I love this chapter because I'm very passionate about storytelling. And and going back through my own life story and identifying where God was easily seen and where he was more veiled. I don't think I'd ever considered that there are points in my story where, if I'm being honest, I didn't see God very clearly. Because like intellectually, I know that he's always been there. But honestly, like if I'm looking back and where I've seen him most clearly, I came from a pretty dark place. Like I had 6 years of testimony building. I refer to it as that were, pretty off the beaten path. I was a bit of a prodigal. And so coming out of that, like it's very easy to see how God, brought me and like restored my life and healed my life. But, and even as a child, I was born dead. I was a stillborn at first. I was brought back. And so like seeing God, very clearly God was there, when I was brought back to health. Very clearly God was there when my dad adopted me. Very clear,
Yeah.
But in actuality, there are definite moments in my life where I would say I felt forgotten. Mm-hmm. I didn't always have a great relationship with my dad. And just a lot of bitter tears cried over that and the sense of injustice of it all. And I think in those moments where the injustice of life, whether I was being bullied or whether it was a difficult time in my family or whether it was even just watching the news, I think those moments of injustice made it harder to recognize that God was there even then, those moments of pain and loss. And so trying to go back, this chapter really challenging us to go back and try to find God in those moments. Where was he? How was he working even then? Has been really helpful. I know when I came back to the Lord, one of the things that I realized that day in that moment was that even when I didn't feel God around me, it wasn't that he had turned his back on me. It's that I had turned my back on him. And if I turn back around, he's right where he always was, was something that I really came to understand. But going back through my life story and finding those moments where even in the hurt, he was there has been a really good challenge for me this week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Now, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I came from such a place in my own like childhood, my family, my spiritual, guidance throughout my life that I've just never questioned that God is literally always there, And so I don't know why, but that's never been like the question of his presence has never been a question in my mind. For me, I can look back and see clearly the times where I was directly looking like in the mirror. I'm looking at myself. In my decision making, in my desires and choices that I made in life, as opposed to looking to God and looking toward his will. And so, yeah, I would say that there were times where I remember God showing himself to me and me being like, oh, that's right. Oh, my word. Yeah, no. Oh, I forgot to look to God. In those tough moments. And moving to Madison was even one of those things where it was like I kind of was just pedaling through life a little bit mindlessly, and just kind of focused on myself and getting a little caught up in my own almost like gluttonous desires, of just like, oh, I'm going to buy things. Oops, sorry. I hit the microphone a lot. I talk with my hands. All right. But, whether I'm overspending or, my actions are like, well, what do I have to do today? I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch TV, instead of like being motivated and like even seeking after God in those moments, or different things where when I moved to Madison and it was so much the right decision and the right path, it totally snapped my view back to God. Mm-hmm. And to have that like, oh, that's right. I know that sounds silly, but if you're somebody like me that can very easily just kind of go into cruise control, it's easy to forget that keeping God at the center of your focus is so important, because life just will take you along. Mm-hmm. It will, but then you're getting sucked up into these currents that might not necessarily be in line with God's will. So yeah, that was probably a time when I realized, oh, I didn't even realize that I hadn't been focusing on God. And now here I am with him back at the center.
Which makes a lot of sense, because you hear the analogy all the time, the mountaintop and the valley, right? Mm-hmm. But how much, especially here in the Midwest, we live on the Great Plains. It's neither the best, it's mm-hmm. not the worst, you know, when you're in that Great Plains season of life, and you're kind of coasting, you're getting by, you're complacent, and then sometimes it takes either the very good or the very bad to refocus you. And so, but bringing yourself back to that place where your eyes are on God, I mean, it's important, and it's something we all have to correct. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a driving term, like
course correction.
Yeah, that's the one. Course correction.
I was going to say, I think that's a lot of travel term. I think that can be used for boats and airplanes.
You have to course correct sometimes, and that's valid. That's
exactly.
Very
so
nice.
I love that she went into like the different play personalities in here, because I think this sparked my me thinking about last week when she was like, oh, write the I choose joy and color and write, and like it just didn't speak to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's part of my play personality. It was the like getting out, riding a bike, telling jokes with my husband. Like those were the things that were like, I can see God in these moments. That spoke to me in a big way. And so these personalities just totally clear all of that up. So with the 8 different play personalities, which do you feel like best represent your play style?
So I'm going to read through these real quick in case someone listening doesn't have any idea what we're talking about. They're saying the 8 different play personalities. You have the Joker, which is like the class clown. I don't know how to pronounce this. Kinesthetes. These are the movers and shakers who like to get out and like physically move to have fun. The explorer, the competitor, the director who loves to organize and plan, the collector, the artist creator, which apparently Candace is not, and the storyteller. So those are the 8 personalities.
Wait, let me guess. You're the storyteller.
But I'm not just the storyteller. That's what was really fun with these. So I'm definitely the storyteller. I love to write and draw and read and watch movies, and that's all part of this personality type, apparently. Mm-hmm. Imaginary friends. I can't tell you how many conversations I have, even as a grown woman, driving in my car, and I am just having these imaginary dialogues with people, like how I would imagine a conversation could go.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I ran into an ex-boyfriend. How's your life been? Let me tell you all about mine. Or like I'm at work and someone says this. Well, then I would say this, and I literally have this out. It's weird. It's fine. It's okay. But then, so I have that storyteller. I would say the director. The director, it says, loves to organize, plan, execute events, planning parties, directing a play, getting people together and like putting something on.
Sure.
I love to do this. I think I discovered when I was planning my wedding how much I actually really do enjoy event planning and organization. And I'm not always great at like maintenance, but even just organizing like the closet in my home or the budget for my family, like those things feel like creative, playful endeavors.
Right.
And so that makes a lot of sense. I never really thought of that as play before, but so storyteller and director would be mine. What about you, Candace?
I would be the Joker.
No.
Yeah, I'm the Joker. That's true. The class clown prankster type. I just love making other people laugh. And I love laughing. I love it when somebody is like super witty, super on the ball, and just that sparks a whole different part of my brain and to think. I think that's what this book has really opened up for me. To think that God is also a jokester makes me like God more. I
love that so much.
Oh,
I love that.
I think that joking and playing in that way, so much of that comes from a well-developed personality. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's just really cool that God so intricately wound all of these little witty things about life that are just hilarious, funny to think about. I mean, if I'm in a conversation with somebody, it is more quickly going to go from okay, do you think the world is actually flat? Or, how has your heart been moved? I don't know. That's not my cup of tea. I'm more just let's go deep into things that don't necessarily exist or aren't true, just to create something funny and creative, So when you say that, okay, I'm not necessarily the artist creator, I don't know if that's entirely true. I think maybe drawing is just not up my up my sleeve. But as far as actually creating, I really like creating ideas. And I think that can expand our view of God. I think it can expand our view of the world, but a lot of that I think for me is less tangible than, actually sitting down and
arts and crafts.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I like.
I love arts and crafts.
It's got its place and purpose, but I'm not drawn to that. It's not something that I need to do all the time.
What about the kinesthetes or the competitor? I know you're really into playing ultimate frisbee and rugby, and
that is a good question. And that actually I think brings me into the challenge with the practices, because I do really like those things, but that's been a real weird relationship for me lately. And I think part of it is I've started to, as an adult, see those things as more of exercise and dutiful and, and then I'm just getting tired easier, because I'm
in your
getting
old age.
Right. I used to be a college athlete and now I am not. And, so just going through that, those stages in my life, it's been kind of difficult. I have a weird relationship to a kinesthetic type play now, because it's not as fun anymore. It feels like more work. And so then I tend to avoid it. But when I'm in shape, or, when it's something that is a little bit easier, then I do really, really love it and enjoy it. So finding that relationship between actually making those things play again is kind of a mission. It's kind of a mission that I'm on. And I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm at. That's kind of something that God and I are working through, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, if we're moving on to the next question, which was which practice from this week's reading was the most helpful, which was the most difficult to complete, and why? I have such amazing joy in watching my children play. And so the fact that was homework was, I'm oh, I got
not
this
too
one
bad.
in a bag. Watching my kids play was not only the most enjoyable, but it was also very informative for me, because I see this imagination bubbling up from my children, and I see how they can take nothing and make something, and how even if they're by themselves, they can make these inanimate objects talk and have fun and adventures and play. And that's really inspiring. But today, actually, as we were walking to the babysitter, I noticed something about their play which was startling to me and revealing to me, because it was very obvious they were playing according to observation.
Oh.
So my 4-year-old has this old phone she found in our house. Like, it doesn't work. It's completely dead. But she likes to play with it like it's a phone. And so the games that she was playing this morning were bad reception, wrong phone number, and selfies. Like, what is it that she looks at in my life?
Oh,
she's
word.
just like, Lydia, can you hear me? Lydia, wrong phone number. I'm just like watching her do this as we're walking down the street. She's like, hold on, I'm going to send pictures from the pool to my mom. I'm like, oh no. So, but like understanding,
That's
like,
amazing.
Not only do kids have this amazing capacity for imagination and creation, and they find joy in even the mundane, and they can entertain themselves on this great level, but they're watching us.
Yeah.
And that was really revealing to me. Just sitting back and watching them play, it just brought my awareness of my own parental responsibility up like 10 levels.
Oh my word. That is too funny. That is too funny. And I'm sure not uncommon. I think that a lot of parents could say, oh yeah, no, I've had that moment.
Yeah. Oh man.
That
So that was an interesting bit of the homework that popped up for me. What about you?
Yeah. Well, with the whole watching kids play, I don't have a lot of kids in my life. We have a couple neighbor kids. And so it was actually fun because this week we engaged more with them than normal. Normal, it's like, hey, how's it going? We say hi to their parents, and then kind of move inside. But this week they're just kind of playing out in the backyard. And so it's like, hey, what's up? What are you guys doing? And it just opens your whole world to this type of thinking that just doesn't even cross my mind, where it's just so imaginative, so playful. And then seeing those things that they do like focus on, whether it's from their own house or things that they've noticed just in our neighborhood or whatever, was just really interesting. We're playing with lightning bugs and catching them, and then they're freaking out because of these bugs, even though it's cool that they light up, they're still bugs. So just having that like intense curiosity, but then like intense responses. And so that was really, really fun. But there was a moment where my husband and I just went on like a day date. And we don't get to do that a lot. We do more during the summer because I obviously get done with work a little bit earlier than most people. And then he works in a high school. So he doesn't have a normal 9 to 5 during the summer. So he has a little bit more time to just be free, have downtime. And so we had this day date where we walked and we got tacos and we rode e-bikes. That's right. And
back to the e-bikes.
Honestly, though, and it was just joyful. Like, we didn't have anything else to do. We didn't have anything else to plan, prepare for, build. It was literally just what comes to the top of our mind and how can we have fun with that. And to me, that was more meaningful than even some of our like, romantic or like intentional dates. It was just so free to have those like freeing moments. I mean, yeah, you just can't beat it.
Well, and I think that's one of the keys to how children play is the freedom. Like, they're not insecure. They're not embarrassed. They're not held back, especially my kids being 2 and 4.
Right.
So I grew up acting. Like, that was my background before I came to Jesus, after I came to Jesus. Like, I was an actress. And so seeing my kids even bring out some of that, and they like choose roles. And one's not embarrassed that she's going to play the boy this time. One's not. I mean, they just are so free and they give themselves to their play wholeheartedly. So when we were challenged to play with them, that was new, to just like devote yourself to letting go and using what you have and just go in there was a practice that I want to pursue more. Play with no agenda, like you said, and with no schedule and no structure, and just for enjoyment. We all need a little bit more of that in our life.
Yeah. And I think God values that in our lives too. In church, we've been talking about spiritual practices and going a little bit deeper. And one of the things is Sabbath, and honoring Sabbath and practicing Sabbath, and what does Sabbath rest actually look like? And, sometimes just having no agenda I mean, it's good for our brains, you know, and I love what she said in here. Like, if it causes our brains to light up, it must be really important to God because he created exactly how our brains work. You know, he created that in our lives. And yeah, I just think that that's really important in allowing us to have that time where we look back to God.
And that's one thing that I think this book has done for me, is helped me see that, like, God cares about play. Yeah. God cares about awe and wonder, and God cares about stories, because, I mean, the way that even play can be used to treat trauma victims. And I love how she goes deep with some of the science, like hook your brain up to a monitor and have some fun and see what happens. Like, that is just, I feel this book's very enlightening to me in that way. And I think we're going to do a whole lot of playing in heaven.
Yeah.
I think heaven's just going to be so full of free, imaginative play.
I'm going to be honest. One thing that she said that stuck out to me, she said, for many, spiritual practices become toil and hard work with little fun and no laughter. This, I suspect, is part of the reason so many disconnect from church and lose interest in religious observances.
Yep.
Wow. Well, and even to think how the world sees Christians right now, we should be having the most fun. You know, I mean, God created that. He created this wonderful, beautiful, amazing world for us to explore and to see his, you know, handiwork all over. We should be showing off that we have more joy and fun than anyone else in this world, you know, not like sad we're missing out on off-color fun, if you will.
And driven by guilt that we're not,
right,
you know, doing more of these liturgical things, or, you know, I need to read this much of my Bible every day or I'm failing. Like, I mean, that defeats the whole purpose. And yet I think that's something where a lot of us are kind of enslaved by.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it kind of gives you, it opens things up. It gives you more freedom to pursue God in ways that spark your own heart and your mind.
Spark joy.
Spark joy.
Murray got it.
Yeah, seriously. But because, you know, we have this outline of what people have drawn out before us of, well, you really should be doing this. You should be doing that. But if you're doing it just to do it, I mean, I guess there is a place for that. You know, if you're feeling really far from God, you know, just reading, just to read, even if it's not like giving you life, might still be good to like keep enriching your heart and bringing you closer to God. But if you just haven't found your niche and you're just not able to continue on with a certain practice because somebody else has told you that that's the way you're supposed to do it, try something else. I mean, who would have thought that painting rocks would have been such a big deal? She talks about that so much.
So often.
I have to paint rocks now.
Like, I really need to.
See what I'm missing out on.
Yeah.
Because I'm a little, like, confused, but also I'll try it. I'll paint some rocks.
Sure. We should paint rocks. We'll next podcast we'll have some painted rocks. Don't hold me to that. I'm not making promises.
Right. I don't know if we can paint here. We'd have to like put down.
Yeah. We're just this whole next podcast is going to be very quiet. It's going to be us just painting rocks.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. This is the second week of our The Gift of Wonder Connected Life Book Club podcast. And if you want to subscribe to our podcast, wherever you download your podcast, that'd be great. Then you can get notifications every single time we come out with a new one. And if you haven't yet signed up for the book club, you can do that at connectedlifebookclub.com.
Meet us on Facebook, get your friends together, form a community group. We would love to hear how you are enjoying this study, and we'd love your responses to these questions too.